Hey Shayne, how are you, man?
I'm doing well, Nate.
So I'm gonna half interview Shayne, half probably have a chit chat. We'll see where it goes.
Do pretty well.
I should mention I'm an advisor to Polymarket, so I believe in the company and have an interest in the company.
Thanks so much.
I'm gonna try to treat this at least a little bit more arm's length at first.
Great.
So tell me what inspires you to found Polymarket. This is like a pandemic project originally, or did the seed of it come before that?
Yeah, you know, the genesis of Polymarket is so deeply intertwined with all the reading I did of Robin Hanson's literature, where he would talk about idea futures and decision markets and futarchy and these crazy ideas that markets were actually the best information source. And even going deeper than that, it's also one of my favorite essays is The Use of Knowledge in Society by Friedrich Hayek. And I always practically found looking at markets like as something that was super cool to derive insights from, whether it was the stock market or like long tail at bookmakers odds. And I was interested in blockchains. I got into Ethereum really when it started. And I always thought the best use case was that you could spin up markets for new things in a really cheap way. Where before, to create a new market was like, extremely elaborate process. And at the onset of the pandemic, no one had really built what you could think of as like a decentralized prediction market where you could create markets on new things. And I was like, hey, I have no money. I'm super passionate about this. I know I can build the thing. Let me go for it. Because it was the thing that I found my deepest source of intellectual curiosity in. And, it's funny because the vision in some ways was, the theory was very much spelled out for me in the literature. And I had the product vision, and it's really just been executing it and overcoming the challenges on the way to getting not just to where we are today, but to where we're going tomorrow. And so at the onset of the pandemic, it was like we need markets on when the vax is going to come, when New York's going to open back up, when the mask shortage will be over. One, for people to hedge against, hedge their risk, but two, just so people like me could look at the odds on the internet and not have to just listen to the talking heads on Twitter.
It felt like in the pandemic, I mean, not uniquely in the pandemic, but it's a time when a lot of information that you're picking up is like spin, basically, right?
Yeah.
It's political spin, or it's medical spin, or it's spin prevent disinformation or whatever else. Why are markets so powerful?
Yeah. I think when you look at like UGC social networks, which is all them, it's just this cycle of there's people creating content that fits any niche or any preconceived beliefs. And the way the algorithm works is if you already lean left or you already lean right, it just serves you more and more of the content that will keep you clued in, which plays further into your confirmation bias. And that's just like a recipe for anything but truth. Whereas with markets, people sometimes say about markets, like the market can stay irrational longer than you can stay solvent, which is like the old trope. And if the market has an objective outcome and there's no leverage, that's not true. You're either going to be right or wrong. So if you set the market up right, where say yes shares is the actual intrinsic value of yes shares, the probability of it coming true, people are basically incentivized and competing with each other to go and price the probability as most accurately as possible. And the big misconception people have about Polymarket is they say, oh, it's the dollar amount of bets or the amount of people betting on either side, which is just not the case. It's in that given moment what the market price is, what people are coming to consensus, what the market is finding equilibrium around, what the probability is. And, it's basically taking all the people who agree on one side, all the people who agree on the other, and the market is synthesizing it down to the level of confidence, or like the level of confidence in terms of people thinking what the probability is if they think that it's definitely going to happen. Maybe it's like how much money you're going to put up at what price. And then at some price, when it's maybe at 80 cents, they're like, oh, wait, this could happen. And they start to find where their consensus is. And when the market does that all together, it goes and aggregates all these disparate beliefs.
So there had been and there are other prediction markets. Inherently any founder is, you can argue, a little bit crazy to commit to an idea for the long term, right? That isn't out there in the marketplace currently. Why did you think Polymarket could work or is working when others didn't? Is it like the structure of the market? Is it liquidity? Is it the decentralization?
Yeah, I think that at the end of the day, we're very passionate about the vision, and we always have taken a very product-oriented approach. It sounds like clickbaity. It sounds like BS. It's not. It really is going and building something practically with a crystal clear vision and going and understanding where you're going, where you are today, and then the sort of challenges you have to overcome with that, and always reverting to product as the solution, as opposed to some roundabout other way. So, and I also think that when people use Polymarket, they can tell that it's built with integrity, and then it's built by people who really care about it, rather than just like knockoffs or people who are copying other products. And I think that people can tell.
Do you think this is by nature a winner-take-all market?
I think that on the contrary, if you look at like brokerage accounts that all are consumer interfaces for like the same shared liquidity, or you look at sports books where it's just all these like commodity products that have are basically like, it's really a duopoly, but generally like an oligopoly where all the products are the same and they all take really high VIGs, where you have a more social and user-driven product that is not just odds feeds or like a B2B white label product. Inherently, there's going to be better network effects, especially when you add in liquidity, both around financial liquidity as well as around social liquidity and social proof. And so I think that we're lucky, but at the same time, there are a lot of market dynamics for prediction markets and how the product works that, like, if you were to reverse engineer today's market share, which is like 90-something% Polymarket, it sort of makes sense how it is winner take all.
Under what conditions do prediction markets not work as well? So, for example, we had at the Democratic Convention, there was rumors of a special guest speaker.
Yeah.
And people thought it was Beyonce. I'm not sure exactly how this happened, right? At Polymarket, we got up to like 97% or something. And you can look, of the 97s, that's actually well calibrated over the long run. But when you get those 97s that don't come up, what effects can bring those about?
It's a great question. I mean, the most obvious condition where it doesn't work well is when the criteria of the market is ambiguous, at which point there's money on the line and people disagree, and there's actual real disagreement. There's different ways to interpret it. People call that a rules cuck. That's sort of like a byproduct of prediction markets, and it's something that, anyone who's in the space is always kind of learning from being involved in them and thinking about preemptively disambiguating any new market that comes in the future. But like you said, there are some markets that totally get it wrong until they get it right. And when I think about that, it's like, first of all, this is, in terms of a financial market, it's still really small. In terms of an idea and as an information source, it may seem like it's part of the zeitgeist and it's a cultural phenomenon, and that may be true. But by the numbers, it's still tiny, and I think it will get a lot bigger. But the real thing I like to think about is, like, what is the alternative? The alternative is just looking at tweets, and there's tweets that will say, oh, Beyonce's playing, and there's other ones that say no shot. And what's cool is that there's something that can actually communicate what it is in terms of a percentage likelihood, which is how we want to think and how we want to think about it naturally. So the fact that it exists is better. And over time, when people get burned, when people lose money, they'll go and get accustomed to being more savvy and thinking more, thinking about both sides and as opposed to just aping in.
Because I like forcing people to think in terms of probabilities, right? At the end of the day, a pretty efficient way to convey information is to say, Kamala Harris has a 52% chance of winning the Electoral College, and there's a 1% chance of an earthquake in San Francisco next year, and all this stuff. I mean, is that kind of the way that you naturally think too? Or are you
Totally.
Okay.
And that's why I've always been a fan of yours.
I appreciate it, man.
I think at its base, like, I always was seeking out where I could see percentage likelihood. And a lot of the time I saw that on your website. A lot of the time I saw that on, weird, like, bare bones, like 1999 HTML websites that, like, were using some sort of model that, like, was just some guy's thing. But the fact that you could look at the probabilities was cool. And, I was always a huge fan of, like, the layout, the OG 538 layout for the NFL about what's their likelihood of winning the championship, conference, etc. And, when I started Polymarket, and I was always calling it an information markets platform, and, like, that was not, like, to use a buzzword, like, that is really what inspired me and what was so exciting was the fact that, I'm not really a trader, but the idea that I could go and look on and see the probabilities of things and how they change over time was just such a tangible 10x improvement on only being able to go and parse through tons of disparate opinions. So that's how I think. And I do think a lot of people do think like that. And then, even in like language, we're like, what are the odds? What are the chances? What's the chance? It's really how we think. And there's like latent demand for a way to go and look at the crystal ball. And that's what we got.
In an earlier era, someone like you might have ended up in the sports betting industry potentially. Have you learned things from the rollout of sports betting, or do you think they could learn things from you or from prediction markets generally?
Yeah, I think that when you look at sports betting products, they're just all the same. There's very little differentiation, and it's because there's very little innovation. It's just that you've got the few winners, and then you have the B2B providers and the white label providers that just every single one gets an off-the-shelf solution and just rebrands it. I think that that's indicative of like the incumbent trying to go and squeeze every last drop of profit. And that's what it's all optimized around, is like we keep our high VIGs that are above market and just like kind of like a remnant of the past. And, we sort of market it aggressively, et cetera. But like the innovator's dilemma will have its day with that industry, because it's just the margins are just so wide and like not friendly to players. But it's always interesting to look at what really smart people who are optimizing for something, like the end state of their product and the end state of the industry's product. Because, if you're just going and trying to get as many people to bet as possible and have the highest margins, that's what it looks like. As you can tell, like our product doesn't look like that product. And I think a large part of that is because the vision was very much so to be on CNN and, in the Wall Street Journal and in Bloomberg. Like, it wouldn't have been successful if it was just like a betting site that didn't actually provide this sort of new format of information. I think you can bet on the election like in hundreds of places, right? But Polymarket is the one place where the entire market structure has been designed for optimal price discovery, and that is what sets it apart as an information source.
So you really are going for the mainstream, right? You're going for every news consumer in America as opposed to like this band of nerds, or is it somewhere in between?
There's always a push and pull between two verticals. One is like people trading and betting on their beliefs, and they have an opinion. And do you really believe your opinion? Put your money where your mouth is. And then this idea of like the second screen to X or to your favorite publication, or the evolution of a newspaper. I really do believe billions of people will eventually look at Polymarket odds as a way to make decisions, as a way to understand what's going on in the world. The trading is still a lot smaller. I mean, even if the volume numbers seem big. But what I'm excited about is that it works. The people who participate, they're going and doing research. They're going and trying to figure out how to have edge. They're trying to understand things better and forecast the future better than other market participants. And like that as a new market inevitably will expand. There's a lot of macro forces behind that. But at a minimum, we know that when someone who may not understand technology at all looks at the Polymarket elections page, they're like, oh, this is useful. What does this say? What's Senate in Arizona? And it answers those questions for those people, and it answers them in real time. And that's just a practical improvement that anyone can take advantage of.
What is the skill set to be really good as a trader at Polymarket?
I definitely think it's being innately curious, being a news junkie. The things that people... the Malay market for the Argentinian election, people were in real time, like making sense of that election better than any global publication, news source, and the commentary around it in the pertinent Polymarket channels is also like really high quality. I mean, there's some shit posting, as there always is, but I think it's someone who's really smart, who understands markets, and has a love for learning and being right, being able to understand something better than someone else. Because again, like the numbers, this isn't like highly levered financial instruments where it's like people are making way more money than otherwise. A large driving force is like being right and being provably right and being smarter than someone and making money for it, making it, even sweeter.
You have to be fast too, right? I mean, during the first presidential debate, the first Biden debate, the market figured out within 5 or 10 minutes that this is going really badly for Biden, right? And at some point, it was going so badly for Biden that Trump's share began to decline because people inferred they're going to have to get rid of Biden, which might actually hurt Trump in the end.
Right, and you can actually plot that out if you look at the price graph of Biden and Trump, cross-referencing with the price graph of Biden dropping out. And, it's kind of almost like a be careful what you wish for type of thing for people who, have a certain horse in the race. It is, the market's pricing things in real time, and these people are not stupid. I think anyone who has underestimated like the Polymarket user base at large and said it's crypto bros or that it's, people who don't understand, there are people who go to insane lengths to go and get research and understand things and be the first to price it. And ultimately, that's to the benefit of everyone who can go and look at the odds and know that they're looking at something that actually, has merit.
Have you testified before Congress about this stuff or?
No.
Okay, you should. Let's say that I'm some mid-tier Democratic senator, Senator Patty Murray of Washington, and you're giving you opening remarks, and you have 30 seconds. Like, what's the pitch for why prediction markets are good, why they should be regulated carefully?
Yeah, that's a great question. Look, I think one of the best components of that is that, when I live my life now and I meet people, and so many people are just really big fans of Polymarket as a way to follow what's likely to happen, particularly with the election. They don't fully understand the trading. They've never looked into it, and look no further than its integration and citation in all these places, predominantly organically. People want this information, and ultimately, on the flip side, I think that there's tangible benefits to civil discourse if people are putting their money where their mouth is behind their opinions.
Yeah.
And when you have the more friction, the more niche, the more it is like it gets contained, obviously. And the goal is one, to prove that this is a net positive. And I think if you look at the way people are participating and the way people are following the information, and to the degree at which people have turned to the information in the wake of what some may say is a misinformation or fake news pandemic, if we really want to go and make it mainstream, and it's got to be a collaborative effort to go and bring in mass market. And I really hope that one day we can participate in that, and I'm excited for that day.
What are your biggest pet peeves, the biggest like red herrings you hear about prediction markets that you wish people understood better?
Going back to what I said about people really think that it has to do with the amount of dollars put on either side, or when people are skeptical of the markets, the criticism they give is just flat out wrong in like almost every scenario.
Yeah, you hear things like, oh, you people are betting on these bad outcomes.
They say, oh, for $600,000 you can manipulate it. What they don't understand is that's $600,000 to move the price in that moment. And the moment, if someone's trying to go and push the price up, they can push the price up until the capital that they're trying to do that goes, is out, and then it's going to go right back to equilibrium. The thing that I find most interesting is people say manipulate the outcome. What does that mean? It means buy something for more than it's worth or sell it for less than it's worth, right? And because the outcome shares have a deterministic payout that's based, on something extrinsic, you can go and model, like there's enough smart money on the sidelines where it's, if someone's going to go and buy price, in a price sensitive way, there's going to be liquidity that shows up and takes it, and the market will just absorb it and go back to normal. I think that's what, anytime that's happened, we've seen. And, I think at the end of the day, look no further than the organic traction, virality around the forecast, then, hey, this is something that people should take seriously and embrace, and it's a net positive.
Cool. It's great talking to you, Shayne. We have 30 seconds for being ushered, I think, off stage, but thank you very much, and happy to be working with you at Polymarket.
Yeah, it's amazing to be able to work with you. It's honestly a dream come true. I emailed you and DM'd you a lot, and then finally, when the moment opened up and your 538 chapter was over, slid right in the DMs. So I'm really happy about that.
Cool, man. Thank you.
Yeah, pleasure.